Hey everyone, welcome back to City Skylines and the Aurelia city. Last time we returned to the place where it all started. We completed the super interchange area by filling some gaps and building a waterfront that nicely stands out in here. Today we will move to the other side of the canal that we also started building last time. We have a lot of interesting projects in front of us today. A compact road interchange, train station, bus terminal, a park and ride parking lot, and lots of other interesting buildings. So let's start. As you could have seen in that previous shot, I do have some temporary buildings, the tram depot for example, and some infrastructure in here, but that's no longer needed because today we're just going to finalize this place. Anyway, we are going to start with this road interchange, and it's going to be a very important connection between the bridge. It's going to be like the start of the bridge that we have built some time ago. It's the bridge that we built, I think, as the first project when we started crossing the river. So it's the bridge that aims towards that very nice transfer station for the trams that we did a long time ago, and the airport, of course. So this bridge was aiming towards the highway. The highway comes very close to the bridge, to the start of the bridge, but I decided that I'm not really going to connect it to the highway itself because we have the super interchange very close. So if people decided to really use the highway to go to the airport, well, they wouldn't use the bridge anyway because they would just circle around on the highway system still and just use the actual interchange in front of the airport to go to it. So this bridge is pretty much serving the local traffic, which makes more sense so that it's just going to be connected to the local, surface avenue that we have down here. Now, at the same time, I didn't really want to spend that much space on this kind of a connection, but I really wanted to provide some, capacity, because if you remember when we did the opposite side of the bridge, I also provided some kind of a mini interchange, especially the left turns, make them just separated, different levels, so they don't really disturb the traffic. And I already know how the traffic is going to look like when this is done, so I can safely say that this was actually a very good decision, because the traffic is not going to be that super light, and especially as we're going to progress with expanding this entire area. Anyway, I'm not really sure what this interchange type might be called. I really wanted to make it super compact, so I decided to, as you can see, basically build it over the main avenue. I think it's built on 3 levels with this light rail or tram just going on a 4th level, that pedestrian way. So it's not exactly compact vertically, but it has a very small footprint, which is what I was aiming for. And this place is going to be quite vertical because even the terrain is actually quite high above the water level, so we can have some places on the waterfront and then some places on top of this terrain, which is going to be much higher. So the interchange was kind of a straightforward thing. I was making a very good use of those roads that I downloaded from the workshop. They are called the Vanilla Overpass Project, I think. And it's basically a set of roads that will allow you to create an elevated ramp that's going to originate from the center of the main avenue, right? So if you're using, for example, the median roads, the median is now going to become an elevated ramp. So that's very good. That's obviously very good for these kinds of compact projects. So I did that, and it has a reasonably high capacity. I think I did some tweaking with some of the roads. I'm later going to add pillars that are going to be L-shaped, just going to go off the main avenue, holding all the ramps on top of it. So I'm going to do that later, but for now that's pretty much finished. You're going to see more of it in the cinematics. So now for the second project for today, and that's going to be the train station together with this tram stop below it. Now this is exactly what you could have seen in that train station tutorial video that I did some couple of weeks back. Now that's kind of why I really wanted to do that video, because I thought that this is kind of a cool technique to do in City Skylines. So this is obviously the vanilla metro station that arrived together with the Sunset Harbor DLC patch, I think. It's not the DLC, it's just the patch. And it's looking very nice. I really like this metro station. The model is just good looking, but it's the metro, right? And I don't have metros in Aurelia, at least technically speaking, I don't have them. But I'm just using these trains. Now, I really wanted to use the building, but at the same time the track. So what I did, if you've seen that video, you already know it, the tutorial. I just destroyed the tracks inside of the building with Move It by just holding Alt and clicking one of the nodes of the station track, and I clicked delete. And then I just made my own custom station track on top of it and moved the station building so that it's just going to fit nicely. And later I'm going to put pedestrian connections to it and make sure that it's going to be functional, because that's what we need in this place. So as you can see, I'm already doing some kind of verticality in this area, because I really wanted to mark some, open spaces already at this point for doing some detailing, for doing some open spaces below the station, because it obviously needs to be somewhat open around it. Some places probably green with some planters, flowers, trees, and something like that. But it wasn't all that clear at this point because I didn't place any buildings, right? But I just placed a couple of high rises in there. I think I want to have this place fairly high density still, even though we are going to be very close to the edge of the city, as I will later mention. So I'm just putting a couple of these buildings on the main avenue down near the river, just really to fill these spaces, nothing all that super interesting. By the way, for today's video, I built a lot of these blocks that are just intended for expanding the city, and I'm really going to be showing the process here for the first couple of blocks. But later, I'm just going to skip that entirely, and we are going to see that in the cinematics, because we have just so many more interesting projects to cover today. So you are definitely going to see in the cinematics a lot more than we built in the time lapse. Okay. Now, by the way, this was also built some time ago, so I still didn't have the Rotterdam mod, which is the mod that is responsible for getting rid of removing the shadows from the roads when you have some kind of terrain below the surface variants of the roads, right? You can see that on that street there below the station. But yeah, I already have the mod. I already do have the mod. I think that for the next video of Aurelia, I'll finally be able to not say this disclaimer, because I already used it for that. Okay. So I was also using this building that already comes with this like an elevated park, but I don't exactly like these kinds of grass textures that already come with these kinds of buildings. Some buildings have them all right, but it's mostly just a thing that I want to have it unified. I want to have the grass pretty much the same with the surface and the buildings, so even the roofs of buildings or these kinds of elevated parks. So I usually just cover it with procedural object grass so I can nicely fit it. And with this particular build today, with this particular episode, I'm already going to start doing some of this more or less final detailing, especially with the surfaces. So for example, for this tram stop that's below the train station, I'm already covering all these holes in the terrain. I'm just putting the grass where it needs to be, and some kind of retaining walls and fences and, barriers between the pavement and grass and things like that, because that's just going to give me a better idea how I need to continue in regards with like buildings and all that. And also with this particular station, it also is kind of reassuring me that I am doing it right, because this particular place, it was kind of a mess at this point. I think I was doing this on the live stream. I wasn't exactly all that satisfied with this area, but when I started doing these surfaces, it became just much, much better. And that's usually how it is with City Skylines. When you're going to start doing the details, even the bigger picture is kind of going to start looking much better. And that was the case for this place as well. Okay, so doing some of these surfaces, as you can see, and this is the most important bit. So I eventually decided to convert the station building into procedural objects, because I thought that I would need to widen the entrances. I'm not really sure what they are, probably escalator, bridges or something, that are modeled on the side of the station, because these paths are obviously very, very wide. But I don't think I needed that. I think that eventually I didn't really touch the station, so it wasn't that necessary. But it was kind of necessary for doing what I'm probably going to do right here. Oh yeah, turning it invisible for, for just a little while, so I can finalize these path connections, and I can just observe whether it's working or not, because that's going to be a bit difficult with the station obstructing the view. So I'm not really going to go into that much details how I did this, how I made the station functional, but like I said, I did a video where I explained this custom train station making, and I used an example with this particular station building itself. So definitely make sure to watch that if you're interested in this technique some more, okay? So that was the station project. I didn't really detail it like super finely, so there's just some detailing left that we will return to. But right now, I wanted to do another project, and with this project, I also needed to start yet another project and then a couple of other projects. So it's going to be a bit confusing. Let me walk you through the process. So at this point, I built this roundabout under the highway, and it's going to serve as some kind of an entrance interchange into the city. So it's not going to be like 100% connected interchange. It's not going to have connections from the highway coming from inside the city. It's going to be just an interchange for people traveling from outside the city or, to outside of the city. So if you're going to, for example, live in some kind of suburbs, like really far away from the city in this direction, then you're just going to use this interchange to enter the city, and you will enter a park and ride parking lot, which is going to be very close to that train station that we are building. It's also going to have a bus terminal later, but I'm kind of, jumping ahead too much. So I'm building this interchange in here, and it's just going to be a simple roundabout. It's going to have only this one side connected to the highways, like I said, only for entering or exiting the city. And then it's going to have two main avenues kind of cutting across, kind of perpendicular through the highway, and then also a smaller road that is going to aim towards that train station that we just built. And that's also the place where I'm going to do the park and ride parking lot, and that's going to be the main entrance towards it, right? Now in here, I'm also building tunnels, but it's kind of looking weird, isn't it? Because I'm converting these highways to tunnels, even though the highway is actually quite tall. Above the water level, for example, or this entire terrain. Even the roundabout, as you can see, is actually quite elevated. And the entire highway, by the way, I really was struggling. I'm not really showing it in the time-lapse. You could have seen it on the streams, though, definitely. I was struggling with elevations because this highway is already quite steep, but I had to do that because otherwise I would not be able to fit all the things below it and do these kinds of terrain changes. But it's actually providing a very nice view. For example, if you're going to go on the highway entering the city and you will just clear the tunnel, you will just exit the tunnel portals, then you will see the entire city, the skyline and everything. And you will be actually quite above that. I mean, not above the skyscrapers, obviously, but you will be definitely above the medium-rise buildings at that elevation. So the entire city is just nicely going to be visible in front of you. I was thinking of when this place is finished, I'm probably going to maybe do some screenshots at the very least, but maybe some kind of cinematic shots showing that, okay? So that was just something that I thought is going to look very nice. But this is obviously like a preparation for something that's going to come next, right? Not exactly in the next episode, in some distant future probably, but we will do some kind of landscaping in this area. I would like to do a bit of a mountain ridge, not very tall, because this is the place where the runways of the airport are kind of aiming for. So, but it's going to be like a ridge that's going to end the city. It's going to create the edge of the city. So that's why I did those tunnel entrances to the highways, so that the highway is going to cut through that ridge, and the ridge itself is just going to be, the edge. It's not really that I don't want to build like super high density all the way to it. I'm probably just going to build maybe some parks around here or something like that. We will see. It's definitely going to be a bit more distant future before we get there. But I really wanted to get this interchange done, this roundabout interchange done, because it's going to connect to this park and ride area that we are going to build just now. Okay, so that nicely changes the topic for this project now. So what is this going to be? And what was the basic idea for this project? It it was supposed to be like a transfer parking lot. I wasn't exactly sure how they're called. I had to Google it before making today's video, but it's just going to be like a double, like a stacked parking lot. Maybe it has like a couple of more levels underground, maybe not exactly necessary to build it or deal with it. And it's just going to serve as like a parking lot for people who arrive outside of the city, from outside of the city, who want to transfer to the trains. Most importantly, trains, but they can also go to the trams because that's also there, and into some buses because there's going to be a bus terminal as well. Although the bus terminal is probably going to be intended for like outside or outer city, intercity buses, and not really for the local service. Okay. But anyway, this parking lot, I thought I would make it completely functional, but as it turns out, you can't really do that unless you kind of fiddle with it a lot, because the parking spaces that I do have, or the parking, how do you call them? Parking plots or something? Well, these that I'm putting down here, right? You can do them on the surface, but they are terrain conforming. Yeah, I think they are terrain conforming, but the actual behavior, like the actual space for the cars, not just the visual, is not terrain conforming. So you can move it up and down. It's not really going to like seemingly not do anything, but the actual parking spots, that's the word, they are going to move up and down. So I guess I could have just made it so I would be able to make this upper one functional, but then it would be just a lot of work really, and I don't think I even had the correct assets at this point, and I just really wanted to get it done. So it's going to be a bit decorative, and only the lower level is going to be functional. But I decided to at least make it somewhat interesting on the upper level, so I decided to use some decals and these colored networks to make the actual parking spots red, for example, because that's a nice color that stands out here, and also use those decals for the crosswalks that are going to aim towards these elevator buildings, okay? So there's going to be this nice like a cutout on the edge there, so you can kind of see below into the parking lot. Like I said, the lower parking lot is going to be functional, so there's going to be cars visible through that gap nicely. And these elevators are going to serve not only as a transfer between the levels, obviously, of the parking lot, but also they are going to be connected, and I'm just going to build that in a couple of seconds, or start building that. They're going to connect to this like a bridge that's going to be like a walkway between all the places of this general area, especially towards that public transport hub, okay? So some of these places here and there I obviously had to detail. I already wanted to make it kind of final, so these kinds of planters and of course pillars, okay? So these pillars are just going to be holding the top of the parking lot. I'm obviously putting them only on the edges, but inside, underneath it, there would be something more, but it's not visible, so no point in really doing that. Also, this road that I'm using down here, I think that's the Vanilla Plus road from the Vanilla Plus pack again. I'm not exactly sure. I just wanted to have some kind of a smaller road, not exactly like a big avenue, but at the same time with some higher capacity. I was thinking that one lane might be reserved for buses, maybe, because of that bus terminal that we're going to build, but that's not exactly necessary at this point. Anyway, this is the skyway that we are going to build here. So I'm going to use the elevator because this is the technique that I used in some different places of the city already, but I think it's working really well in these kinds of projects, so I'm going to continue with that. What I'm doing is I'm basically taking just the elevator building, I think the tallest one, I'm not exactly sure, and converting it into procedural objects, rotating it 90 degrees so it's kind of laying on the side, and just changing its shape a bit so it's looking a bit like this. It has just a different cross section. It's a bit smaller than the original, right? And then I'm just going to copy paste it a couple of more times, make sure the elevation is right and everything is just looking good, and make it go all the way from the parking lots all the way to this intersection, which is also going to connect down, or not down, but to the same level for the station, for the train station. And there's also going to be a connection down to these platforms for the bus terminal, and people can even use those connections for the actual station to move down to the tram stop, okay? So if you just parked your car on this park and ride place, then you can just transfer to whatever mode of transportation you like. Okay. So this gap in here, this block, I wasn't actually trying to build a bus terminal in here at first. I wanted to maybe just fill it with some probably commercial buildings, but then it actually felt like a really appropriate thing to do to just build a bus terminal, because we are on the edge of the city. We already built the parking lot, park and ride place. So why not build some kind of an intercity bus terminal? Because this place is kind of going to be a bit alone. I'm not really expanding the city past this area just yet. I'm not really going to put any live lines into this area, into this bus terminal, but later I will definitely do that, because I just want the place to be a bit alive. I don't really want to have it only as a static display. At least not really for this place. I don't really mind that for some different project in the city, but bus terminals, they probably should be a bit more alive. So I'm using a very similar technique that I used, many times before. I'm just putting these kinds of small roads parallel to each other and then connecting them in a bit angled way, at the start and at the end. But with this particular station, I already have, of course, the intersection marking tools, so I can nicely use them to just cover all of these roads in some kind of a nice way with probably red. Why not? I already used it for the parking lots. I kind of tried to use the same shade here. So this is just me doing like a first rough cut, and then I decided that I want to do these stripes just so it's not completely red, but there's some variety in there. So the striped area is going to be the place where buses are actually going to load and unload people. Okay, and then some of these stripes in here and crosswalks and all these kinds of little details on the roads that I can obviously afford to do, because I now have the intersection marking tools, which are helping me a lot with these kinds of projects. The entire station is going to be covered, for example, with this glass roof in here. I'm later going to do with procedural objects some kind of details, like, for example, these pillars that are coupled with lights. And I'm also going to build some kind of little supports where the actual white pillars are. Oh yeah, you can already see them. I just skipped it in the time lapse. So it's all going to look very nice. And I also did those purple trees, kind of dividing the terminal from the train station, and kind of accidentally I made this place look very Japanese. At least I have that kind of feeling from this place. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna let you decide how you feel about that place, but it definitely feels like that to me. So this is the final thing, and as you can see, we nicely continued over the canal that we built last time. We started building the last time when we just expanded the city in this direction. On the right side of the highway, you can see all these different building blocks that I just added later. You could not have seen that in the time lapse, but it's just some high density that's just going to complement this entire area. And I really like how basically the highway and the railway is creating this like a valley through this high density place where the park and ride area is, and also the bus terminal. So that's looking very nice. It's all looking very compact, obviously with this interchange as well. As you can see, it's quite busy, and you can also see those pillars that I talked about, how I'm just going to put them on the side. It's going to create these ribs just holding all the roads on it. I also just did this waterfront real quick, exactly with the same style like I did before in the last video. All right, so as you can see, even the train station, the tram station, everything about this place is quite busy. Probably also thanks to the pedestrian road that is coming over the bridge. As you can see, a lot of people are working on it, so it's also very nice to just see that. This upper parking lot, I eventually decided to just cover it with props of vehicles, and I like it. I just like how how kind of busy it looks like, okay? Unfortunately, we don't really have that many vehicles just coming from the highway, but like I said, that's just because this place is not exactly done. All the high density around this place just needs to be expanded for some proper traffic and, you know, volume of people just moving through this area. And this particular shot is something that I really, really liked, because it just shows the skyline of the city. It shows the corridor for the railway. As you can see, this railway is very straight going through this area, and it has all these high density stuff all on all sides. So that's looking very, very nice. The highway has something very similar. So, and like I said, it's going sloped down into the city. So I was maybe thinking of doing some kind of shots there after this general area is done. Anyway, in the next episode, we are going to move back to that industrial area that we did some time ago already. We are going to expand it. We are going to build a cargo harbor. So that's something to look forward to. Guys, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you liked it. If you did, then you can always put a thumbs up under the video, write some comment, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Also, big thanks to all the channel supporters, all the channel members. I will see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye.